Hello! In this video we're going to have a look at the improvements to step debugging in Xdebug 3.1. And for a change I will be using the latest PHP Debug plugin for Visual Studio Code instead of PHP Storm. One of the new features in Xdebug 3.1 is that it allows you to start a debugging request when the script is already executing. In Xdebug 3.0 and earlier, Xdebug would only attempt to connect to an IDE at the start of the request. For long-running command line scripts, perhaps running multiple tasks picked of a queue, this means that a debug session would have to have been started for the full duration of this request. Let's have a look at this example, in which I've emulated a simple worker process where each task calculates a Fibonacci number and stores the result in a property. The main loop, the process function that we call for every task, and then the implementation of the Fibonacci function. Before I run the script, I export the xdebug_mode equals debug and xdebug_session equals demo environment variables. So Xdebug is put in step debug mode and that it knows to initiate a debugging session when the script starts. When we run the script, it shows the following output. Because the IDE has not been put in listen mode, there is no debug session. In order to do so, we first must configure the PHP Debug plugin by creating a launch file. You do that by going to Run and select Add Configuration. By default, it creates 3 different configurations. We will only be looking at the first one today, the Listen for Xdebug configuration. When we activate it, VS Code will then listen for incoming debug connections. Let's try that. We activate the Run and Debug tab. Switch back to the workers script and add a breakpoint by clicking inline 22 in the margin. When we now click the Start Debugging arrow, the IDE will be put in listen mode. Now we can run the script again. And indeed, the debugger stops at the breakpoint that we have set. Now let's stop listening and restart our long command line process. While the script is running, we can put the IDE in listen for Xdebug mode, but nothing will happen. As I mentioned, Xdebug will only attempt to connect at the start of the request. Xdebug 3.1 adds a new function Xdebug connect to client that you can call within a script to ask Xdebug to try to make a debug connection at that point. Let's update the script to do this and then restart the worker queue again. Now let's restart our workers process again. You will see that it attempts to connect at every task. When we now put the IDE in listen mode, the breakpoint will be hit again. And indeed, it stopped at this breakpoint. And now we can step through and inspect our variables. When we are done with debugging, we can use the Detach button to let the rest of the script continue. You do that by holding Shift and clicking on the Stop button. The debugging session has now stopped, but the script continues. Now let's have a look at another new Xdebug 3.1 feature, the Xdebug_notify function. You can call this function with a variable, and if a debug session is active, the variable can then be displayed in the IDE as long as the IDE supports this feature. Right now, that's only the PHP Debug plugin for VS Code. Let's ask this function and a breakpoint to see how this works. We put the IDE in listening mode and then start our CLI script. We've set a breakpoint on line 19, which is the return of this function, and we can see that in the debug console there is now an entry called calculator, which is our class name. We can expand this to see what all the properties values are. In this case, it's only last result equals 1. Let's run once more to get to our next result. And the new value has now been notified, also a calculator object, which we can now expand. The first 2 Fibonacci numbers are of course 1, but if we run the script 3 more times, you'll see a different result. For the last one, the last result is now 5. If anything goes wrong with debugging, the PHP Debug plugin allows you to collect information to attach for a bug report. The plugin's author would like to know which version is being used, which you can copy to the clipboard like this. Click on Help, click on About, and click Copy. Additional information in the form of a debugging log is also required. You can enable it by enabling logging in launch.json. And save the file with Ctrl S. Let's put the IDE in listen mode again and start our script. The full debug output can be found in the debug console, which we can copy to the clipboard by right-clicking and selecting Copy All. Attach both the version information and the debugging log to the bug report if you're submitting one. The PHP Debug plugin author will thank you. With this, I'm concluding this video about Xdebug 3.1's new debugging features. If you enjoyed this, please click like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back